situation where you find that they must look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at what the papers are saying. Beginning with Daily Trust newspaper, here we have the lead story that talks about Sudan crisis. Federal government begins evacuation of stranded Nigerians tomorrow. We have riders here that says 5,500 waiting for government action. Students move to Ethiopia, cry for rescue. Airplanes bypass airspace. You can find details of that on page 4, and there's a pictorial of people fetching barrels with water in southern Khartoum amid water shortages caused by the ongoing crisis. Now moving on to more stories. At the top of the page there, Tinubu returns today amid National Assembly leadership contest. We also have, as Buhari's tenure ends, auto policy remains elusive. Details on page 19. Matawalle reinstates Emir suspended for turbaning bandits leader. We also have more stories. Hunger, sickness hit Niger IDP's camp. We also have man killed trying to settle quarrel over urinating point. And I'll follow your Adwa's steps to actualize Katsina people's mandate, says Rada. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
And moving on to The Guardian this morning, it leads with the headline, Rising Poverty, Cost Dumping eSIM Adoption, Impacts on Nigeria's Card Production. You'll find the details of the story on page 6. And two other major stories there on the front page. Ayetoro, Ondo communities slipping into Atlantic Ocean. And, Sudan, FG negotiates safe exit for stranded Nigerians. You find there the pictures of the Foreign Affairs Minister and the DG of the Nigeria in the Diaspora Commission. And two other stories, how unregulated estate agencies firm engage in multi-million naira scam. Another Lagos building collapses 24 hours after Sanwo-Olu's visit to Banana Island site. And you find those stories on the Metro page. And finally, Matawalle reinstates Emir suspended for turbaning bandit kingpin. These are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The lead story still talks about Sudan conflict. Government seeks Egypt support to rescue 5,500 Nigerians by road. We have writers here that says federal government warns as Nigerian students pay $100 for dangerous roads. We are waiting for Sudanese government to provide safe corridor for evacuation, says minister. And there is a pictorial there of Sudanese refugees and supporters protesting the ongoing civil war between two factions at the Dam Square. All right, so let's move on to more stories. At the top of the page there, Nigeria's indebtedness to World Bank now 6 trillion naira. NLNG Train 7 reps summon Dewu Saipem over workers' petition. Police launch manhunt for fleeing Adamawa wreck. We also have on the bottom of the page there, Tinubu may return today to meet APC NWC. 2 children, 5 others burned to death in Lagos-Ibadan highway crash. And LASG blames developers as another 3-story building collapses. These are some of the stories on the Punch.
And moving on to The Nation newspaper, staying with the issue in Sudan, Nigerian students lament ordeal in crisis-torn Sudan. And with the riders, it is dangerous to evacuate over 5,500 citizens without clearance, says federal government. US, UK, France, Russia move out nationals. One wonders how these other countries are doing it, and how it does appear that only the Nigerians that seem to be waiting for some kind of clearance. We'll get more details when we come to the analysis. And 2 other stories there on The Nation. Police begin probe of suspended Adamawa wreck. Expectations from Tinubu by Niger Delta leaders. Namani asks Obi to discontinue petition And another story, building collapses in Lagos. 3 ways out of debt crisis, and this is coming from renowned economist Rewani. And finally, we have 40% pay rise excites federal workers. Well, we don't know if that promise is to be fulfilled by the outgoing government or the incoming one. But these are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's move on to this day newspaper. Decades of gas. NCDMB advocates annual reporting of implementation status. NMDPRA finalizing on domestic gas price tariffs in support of initiatives. We also have federal government amid global dynamics, economic trade alliances crucial for Nigeria's prosperity. We also have Eid. Obi celebrates with Muslims in Onitsha. Faleke confirms Tinubu's return today, mobilizers welcome. We also have the lead story that still talks about Obi meeting Muslims, says Nigeria is one, only divided by politics, declares he's never discriminated against anyone on religion basis. Bola queries exclusion of Igbo from Tinubu's inauguration committee, says it signposts marginalization, lack of vision. APC dissolves presidential campaign council. And then there's a pictorial there of Eid lunch with Shatima, a vice president-elect, seen with Governor Babagana Zulum during a Salah lunch organized by Zulum in honor of the vice president-elect in Maiduguri. And then finally, federal government pledges to evacuate Nigerians back home from Sudan in the next 2 days.
And moving on to Business Day, the niche paper that looks what's happening in the world of business. It has this big story. The trillion naira government scheme struggle to curb poverty. And the story has other riders there. Nigeria's borrowing from China triples to $4 billion under Buhari. Private sector outline how Tinubu can reduce poverty. We have pictures there of some female Muslims during the 2023 Eid Fitr prayer after the Ramadan fasting at the Ile-Zik prayer ground, Ikeja, Lagos on Friday. Colorful pictures there from these young women. And to other stories, malaria vaccine seen easing pressure on Nigeria's household income. You want to understand how? Please pick up the copy of today's Business Day. And of course, you have an analysis there right above the nameplate. 3 years on, Nigeria's decade of gas remains just a slogan. Tanki projects stall on funding, government inaction. That will be an interesting read, I'm sure, if you have been tracking developments around that title. These are the major headlines on the front page of Business Day this morning.
Finally, on Vanguard newspaper, from the top there, we've taken these stories on Zamfara and Sudan war. Now let's talk about the lead story here on global competitiveness. Over 30 taxes choke industries in Nigeria. 17 bills on more levies pending in NAS. Taxes above global average of 23.37%. SMEs lose 9% of yearly income, and stakeholders chart way forward. Now we have more stories beside that. One, federal government failed woefully on security, says Catholic Archbishop. Nationwide blackout looms as generation falls below 4,000 megawatts. APC dissolves presidential campaign council. 52 billion naira SWP fund. Atiku's aid Keyamo Atiku's aid, Keyamo, bicker over assets declaration. Now we also have 10th NAS, Betara Wase Jaji in 3-horse race for speaker, and how to tackle insecurity in Nigeria, says Italian envoy. Now with this, we have come to the end of reading out most of the stories on the front pages of the national dailies, and
interested. We have joined us one of our own, Mr. Kande Amadu. It's a pleasure to bring you back to the studio.
Thank you very much.
We seem to have massacred your your salary plans. I hope we are forgiven nonetheless. It's the Nigerian story.
Yeah.
Every time there's the need for us to wake up, we sort of we behave like time. We have control over time and space. I was listening to Professor Akiemi, the veteran international ambassador of repute, who said we seem to be a master at last minute approach.
Exactly.
2-3 days ago, the government said they are still watching the situation in Sudan when every other governments were practically evacuating, including a country like Uganda. Today, they are waiting for clearance from a government that is distracted with a war in its hands before they are able to move in to evacuate. As a matter of fact, one of the papers said we are negotiating with Egypt to evacuate by road to Egypt. What exactly do you think it's going on with our government and the stranded Nigerians in Sudan?
It's interesting. I think there is just this lack of focus. Maybe because of the transition between two governments, but there is, a glaring lack of focus, a glaring lack of the feeling of consciousness about the danger that is present. There is a clear and present danger to the Nigerians that are in Sudan. And government doesn't seem to. In fact, in the news yesterday was the fact that they were even thinking of setting up a committee. Do you set up committees at periods of times like this? So it's all excuses. You're negotiating. You're looking for safe corridor. You're setting up committee.
You're
waiting for clearance. And what needs to be done is very clear.
And even the president had to avoid the airspace. If the president, who is some 40,000 feet above sea level,
had to go around.
What becomes the faith of Nigerians on the ground? What options do they have at this point?
Well, I think Nigeria will finally get around to it. We normally do this in the last minutes. That sense of urgency. And the truth is that if you go to Nigerian missions all over the world, there's this red tape that is always present. And the Nigerians there that are resident in those countries will tell you that when it comes to issues of their welfare, of their protection against countries, against the policies of countries in various parts of the world, the Nigerian missions are sadly lacking. Now, I'm not a diplomat, so I won't want to belittle the work of the diplomatic missions there. But this is what we've heard, because I've been to several countries, even in Africa. And Nigeria is supposed to be the giant of Africa. And you find out that if you speak to these people one-on-one, there are those challenges that it seems that there's so much red tape and you can't get around. And so there's the need to develop more consciousness about who we are. Because if we say we're the giant of Africa, then we must treat our citizens as our main priority. The US regards one citizen as can't afford to lose one citizen. Here we are, dilly-dallying when lives of over 5,000 citizens are at stake. And the Nigerian students there, it may be a perception, but the Nigerian students there are saying it's only Nigerians that are left stranded in that country.
And desperate times calls for desperate measures. You actually have them paying $100 just to evacuate themselves, because they don't have trust in the government itself.
So what is the mission in Sudan doing? That's the question to ask. You understand? And there are some emergency funds that the mission in Sudan should first undertake before even looking to, the Nigerian government to come in and help. So what is happening really? These are questions that should be interrogated,
Interesting question we should ask. We saw these incidents play out in Ukraine slightly over a year ago.
Yeah.
Every other country made effort. We waited until our students had to particularly take trains to Budapest. We were saying go to neighboring countries,
to the neighboring country.
Budapest, go to wherever before the government can make efforts to meet you, midway. It's unfortunate how these things operate. We have, I think, outside the Ministry of Education, the Foreign Ministry is the second biggest ministry in this country. Coordination around this ministry should be better than what you have seen, as you have pointed out. Still staying with this issue, Matawale is in the news again.
What is really happening? That's the question.
What's this whole concept of suspending people for what is a glaring offense, something people had condemned, and then waking up somewhere down the line and reinstating. At first, when that story was up, we understood that it had the blessings of even the state government in a way, because they were doing everything possible to curtail the incidences there. But when the outcry became too much, he was suspended. Now that the governor is on his way out. He has reinstated it. What do you think is happening here?
I think first and foremost, there is damage control. About a government that wants to, well, the government is on the way out. The governor is on the way out. So he's going to try and mend broken fences before he leaves. That particular incident raised a lot of eyebrows. And you can understand the eyebrows it raised. This is a person that is described as a repentant bandit, and you give him a chieftaincy title. I mean, the optics were just wrong. Yes, if there was any way, and you know, we're now coming full circle. The Zamfara state government is saying in this release that they now recognize that it was peace-building efforts that led to the conferment of that title. And I don't understand, was there no other way to go? Because we seem to forget that the repentant bandits, there are lives there's kidnapping, there are crimes, major capital crimes that the man has committed.
So basically, repenting doesn't absolve you.
Repenting doesn't absolve you of anything. In fact, if we were very considerate of the laws in this country, then that man, if he's too large for government now, would have maybe it will be on a wanted list. He won't be receiving chieftaincy titles. He'll be on a wanted list, awaiting justice whenever they can reach him. Maybe the situation now is too volatile to reach him. But sometime in future, the government will reach out and clamp down on him. And that's the way it should be done. So it's double speak. Well, it just shows that then in issues of conflict resolution, we don't really take very serious because the optics are just bad.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the Adamawa State Rec, INEC Rec. He's gone AWOL. Police has actually launched a manhunt for him. And you also have the NBA, some lawyers, a coalition of lawyers, asking the NBA to disbar him for what he did. So let's have your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are radically different from the thoughts of Nigerians here. Well, the police has declared him wanted. They declared the commissioner of police that was in the same room with him when he was making the announcement, the speech. They declared him wanted. You know, the president was very clear. He said, investigate all the security agents that were there in the room. So, but what it looks like now is that it's one person carrying the can. You know, maybe it's diversionary. I don't want to say it is. But what are we talking? What are we saying about the other people that were in the room in an obvious act of collusion? You understand? The investigations there Have the investigations led to, because investigations, maybe we in Nigeria see investigations as you clamp down on the person who is at fault and interrogate him by all means necessary. What about the investigations around? Has, you know, what led to what emboldened a man to look at the law, a lawyer, and circumvent it publicly, you understand? And then, you know, having interrogate here is declared AWOL, diversionary tactics, if you ask me.
Does it, well, you've said it all in your final remarks, but what does it sum up to? Femi Falana was in a sister channel the other day and was saying there seemed to be a link between that declaration and an acceptance speech that took place in some other venue. Accepting a declaration in itself that has no place or basis in law.
No.
So why are we quiet about what appears to be a triangle?
A triangle. Because very clearly the person who made the declaration has now distanced herself from the action. Now, funny, isn't it?
Yes, even
that
though
if it
she had approached a court to say uphold that declaration.
But now she's saying INEC was that, and you know, it's funny. Because if this had flown, she would have been the main beneficiary. And so nobody is saying anything about her, probably because she's a politician that is linked to the ruling party. And you find out that's how that will be swept under the carpet. If there's going to be an investigation, it should be a full and wide investigation that looks at all the culpable parties. We are quickly forgetting the national commissioners were kidnapped and beaten. You understand? And you know, there was some link between that kidnap and beating to a political party that is a major opposition party. I don't want to name names. You understand?
Yeah.
So there are so many angles to this story that investigations should bring up. So to come to tell us that the resident electoral commissioner is AWOL and they've launched a manhunt for him is, you know, I'll give you a funny story. The former chairman of the pension, Maina, was declared AWOL by police. One afternoon like that, he strolled into the villa.
The police escort.
Strolled into the villa. The only thing that happened was that he was prevented from seeing the president, because you know, up to that point he had free leeway to enter. You understand? I'm talking about not this administration, the previous one. But this was a man that had been publicly declared wanted.
Interesting. Conversation continue to range around these issues. There are those who are even beginning to come up with a conspiracy theory that even the inconclusive election you had in Adamawa may have been so because of one or two tamperings by these parties that have shown the level of desperation that is now calling for the investigation of that entire process. We'll see how this government is able to clean itself out of this. But very quickly, the president in waiting is expected back in town. The atmosphere has been somewhat quiet, other than its spokespersons lighting up different points, as it were. But we heard that the Presidential Campaign Council has been officially dissolved, and is now coming in ahead of the inaugurations to probably, first of all, wade into the leadership choice for the National Assembly and other matters. How do you think the atmosphere is preparing to receive him, and what kind of movement do we expect to see in the coming days?
You know, I raised this concern in the newsroom yesterday. We were having a discussion. And I said, this is 1 month to inauguration, not one meeting. When Buhari became president-elect, 2015, he did 2 clear months, 2.5 clear months at the defense house, where where he had already been given meeting different groups. In fact, by the time he started meeting groups, it took the shine off the presidential villa because everybody just moved over there. Now we've seen a delay of over 1 month before that is happening. And it raises concerns that, well, how is he preparing for government? Because when Buhari got into power, he now took 6 months to appoint his ministers. So I hope we are not going to have a repetition of that, because he's already lost 1 month, 1.5 months just resting.
Interesting. Well, I think in fairness to the government, we saw some members of the transition committee in Washington, D.C. at the IMF World Bank meeting. The minister discussed when we asked her that they requested to be part of some of the meeting to understand some of the negotiations that are ongoing, and so that when they come, they will hit the ground running. That's the much we know. Whether the big man in waiting gets briefing in London or France is another part.
No. I think that one of the persons on that team is Olawale Edu.
Yes.
Who should have been finance minister as way back as 2015.
Yeah.
Because of his expertise and because of all that. You would know because you are in the finance sector. But that didn't happen then. And I think Nigeria lost, that's my personal opinion. Nigeria lost that opportunity. We are just fiddling. We are fiddling for 8 years. You understand?
Interesting.
So now, you understand, I believe that his confidence in Olawale Edo would probably be the reason why he's not too concerned.
Yeah, well, Edu was there in the meeting at Washington. At least I cited him twice, alongside Doyin Salami, who was a member of the MPC and a current faculty member of the LBS. That's the much that we can bring to you today on the front pages. It's been nice talking to you, editor, public affairs commentator, who has found time to join us. We've robbed you of your salary, as we have said. We'll find space to make up for it. hopefully within a week where we have the full complement of the workforce returning. Thank you very much for finding time.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, we will take a short breather. We return at the top of the hour to serve you more from Daybreak. Please stay with us.
Where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that